I thought I understood betrayal. I thought I knew what it looked like when a life imploded. I knew nothing. It didn't happen in a whisper. It happened under the harsh fluorescent lights of a corporate lobby, with 100 eyes on me, while my world played out on a 70-inch screen for everyone to see. That's when I realized the collapse wasn't an accident. It was a plan. My name is Eliza Vance. My friends call me Elle. But in my professional life, I'm the person corporations call when the numbers don't add up. I'm a forensic accountant. I find ghosts in the ledgers. I trace the untraceable. I am trained to see the patterns everyone else misses, to find the single lie buried under a mountain of data. It is a bitter irony, then, that I was the last person to see this. It was our 10th anniversary. 10 years. I'd just closed a brutal 3-month audit and, on impulse, decided to surprise my husband, Liam. He was a vice president at Viridian Dynamics, a man whose ambition I had always admired, even if I sometimes worried it outpaced his patience. I left my office 2 hours early, clutching reservations for the small restaurant where he had proposed, picturing that charming, boyish smile he still deployed so effectively. The Viridian lobby was designed to intimidate. It was a cavern of Italian marble and brushed steel, soaring 3 full stories to a glass ceiling. It was always humming with the sound of billions of dollars changing hands. But as I pushed through the heavy glass doors, the hum stopped. It didn't fade. It cut off, as if someone had severed a wire. The click of my heels on the marble floor sounded like gunshots in the sudden, oppressive silence. I saw the receptionist, a young woman who always complimented my coats, freeze with her phone halfway to her ear. 2 security guards by the elevator bank, men who usually gave me a polite, professional nod, just stared. Their eyes were wide, their faces blank with shock. Everyone was looking at me, and it wasn't the look I was used to, not the respect or mild fear I commanded as an auditor. This was something else. It was thick, suffocating, and horribly invasive. It was pity. My stomach clenched. I am good with data, not with public humiliation. Confused, I followed their collective gaze. I turned to the massive digital display that dominated the far wall. It was a 70-inch screen, usually reserved for stock tickers and bland market news. Today, it was running a slick, professionally produced video on a loop. Elegant, sharp font scrolled across the screen. Viridian Dynamics welcomes our new senior vice president, Serena Holloway. I didn't know any Serena Holloway. For a stupid, flickering second, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe Liam's division was just getting a new boss. Then the camera panned out. There she was, Serena. Younger than me, blonde, wearing a sharp, crimson dress that probably cost $3,000. She was radiant, and standing next to her, beaming with a pride I hadn't seen on his face in years, was my husband, Liam. His hand was on her waist, not casually, not in a friendly, colleague-like way. It was planted, possessive, his fingers spread slightly as if claiming her. They stood together, smiling at the camera like a power couple posing for a magazine cover. My breath hitched. I couldn't process the image, Liam and this woman. Then the caption appeared beneath their smiling faces. Congratulations to Serena and Liam on their new leadership roles. Roles, plural. The air in my lungs turned to glass. I couldn't move. I just stared, watching the video loop again. Liam laughing, squeezing Serena's waist as she tilted her head toward him. The silence in the lobby was deafening. I could feel dozens of eyes burning into my back. My phone vibrated in my hand. The buzz was so violent it shocked me back to reality. I fumbled, almost dropping it. It was a text message. From my mother, Margaret. It was a text message. From my mother, Margaret. So happy for Liam. Finally getting the recognition he deserves. You must be so proud. The words blurred. You must be so proud. So happy for Liam. Finally getting the recognition he deserves. You must be so proud. The words blurred. You must be so proud. My mother knew. My mother knew about his promotion, his new leadership role. Before I did. She knew. And she assumed I was celebrating right alongside him. The blood drained from my face, replaced instantly by a scalding heat that rushed up my neck and settled in my cheeks. I wasn't just the wife he was cheating on. I wasn't just the partner he was lying to. I was the company joke. Every single person in this lobby, the guards, the receptionists, the analysts walking by, they all knew. They had probably been watching this announcement all morning. They had seen my husband with his new woman, celebrating his new life, and they had pitied the poor, clueless wife who was about to walk in holding anniversary reservations. I was the last to know. I did not cry. I did not scream. My profession does not allow for emotional outbursts. It demands precision. It demands control. I turned around, very slowly. The receptionist was now staring intently at her keyboard, her face bright red. The guards were suddenly fascinated by their own shoes. I walked back toward the glass doors. The silence followed me, a physical weight on my shoulders. My cheeks were burning, hot with a shame so profound it tasted like acid. But beneath the heat, something else was happening. My mind, the part of me that audits and calculates and finds the truth, was already clicking into place. It was going cold. By the time I pushed through the revolving door and stepped out onto the busy sidewalk, the shame was already hardening. It was hardening into ice. I didn't go home. Home was a concept that had evaporated in the 30 seconds I stood in that lobby. Home was a shared space, and the man I shared it with was a stranger and a fraud. I took a cab straight to the downtown offices of Julian Thorne. Julian wasn't a divorce lawyer. Julian was my firm's corporate counsel, a shark in a $2,000 suit who specialized in hostile mergers, intellectual property theft, and high-stakes internal disputes. He was the man you called when you needed to legally dismantle someone. His secretary looked surprised to see me without an appointment, but Julian waved me in the moment he saw my face. He knew my professional mask. He had never seen this one. He closed the door to his mahogany-paneled office. "Elle, what's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost." "I want a divorce," I said. The words came out flat, devoid of emotion. Julian blinked, leaning back in his chair. "Okay, that's not my specialty. Elle, but I can refer you to the best family law attorney in the city." "I'm not here for a referral, Julian." I sat down opposite him, placing my hands on his desk. "I want a divorce, but that's secondary. More importantly, I want a full, deep-dive forensic audit on Viridian Dynamics and every single asset, trust, and shell company registered to my husband, Liam Vance." Julian's expression sharpened. He laced his fingers. "That's a significant request. You're talking about auditing a public company because of a domestic issue. This stopped being a domestic issue an hour ago." I looked him straight in the eye. Liam was just publicly promoted to senior vice president in a company-wide announcement. He's sharing the role with a new hire named Serena Holloway. They were presented as a pair. "Congratulations, I suppose," Julian said, clearly confused. "He's not smart enough for that job, Julian," I said, and the coldness in my own voice startled me. "I've helped him with his quarterly reports for 10 years. He's a good salesman, but he has no strategic depth. He's charming, not brilliant. He's not senior VP material." I leaned in. "He didn't earn it. He's only smart enough to steal. I want you to find out what he stole, who he stole it from, and how he's covering his tracks." Julian was silent for a long moment. He understood. This wasn't a scorned wife. This was a forensic accountant telling him a crime had been committed. "All right," he said, his voice dropping into its professional battlefield tone. "This is no longer a personal matter. This is a potential financial irregularity. We proceed with absolute discretion." "Here's the plan," I said, the auditor in me taking over. The pain was still there, a white-hot core in my chest, but I was walling it off with procedure. "You prepare the legal framework. Injunctions, discovery motions, Prepare to petition the court to freeze his assets, citing marital dissolution and suspected financial malfeasance. I will handle the audit. Discreetly. You can't audit your own husband's company. L. It's a conflict of interest. I'm not auditing his company, I clarified. I'm auditing my life. I'm auditing our joint accounts, our retirement funds, our investment portfolios. I'm going to trace every dollar he's touched for the last 5 years. He may have hidden his tracks at Viridian, but he got sloppy at home. They always do. We spent the next hour mapping it out. Controlled destruction. I left Julian's office and did the first practical thing. I called our private banker. This is Eliza Vance. I am invoking the emergency separation clause on all joint accounts held with Liam Vance. Freeze everything. No withdrawals, no transfers. Nothing moves without my signature. Yes, effective immediately. That night, I didn't sleep. I went to my personal office, a small room in a secure, anonymous building I used for my most sensitive cases, and I began the audit of my own marriage. It didn't take long to find the first thread. With the accounts frozen, I could see the most recent activity. A single massive credit card payment from our primary joint checking account, paid just 3 weeks ago. It was for over $40,000. I didn't recognize the charge. I pulled the underlying statement. It was for a luxury travel agency. The expense line item was simple. Amalfi Coast package, 2 adults, presidential suite. I hadn't been to the Amalfi Coast. My fingers trembled. Just once. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and let the ice form again. This wasn't a vacation. This was evidence. This was an unapproved, non-budgeted expenditure. I dug deeper, pulling our joint investment portfolio, the one Liam had insisted on managing for the last 4 years. "You're so busy, Elle," he'd said. "Let me handle this. Let me contribute." I ran the numbers. My stomach hollowed out. He hadn't just been managing it. He'd been leveraging it. He'd taken out lines of credit against our stocks, reinvesting in high-risk ventures I'd never heard of. He was either the stupidest investor alive or he was deliberately churning our money for a purpose I couldn't yet see. I was untangling a complex web of shell accounts and leveraged funds when my secure line buzzed. It was Julian. It was past midnight. "I found her," he said. No preamble. "Serena Holloway." "Serena Holloway," he confirmed. His voice was grim. "She's not just a new hire. Elle, I ran her name through our corporate database. She's not an executive. She's not even in the industry." "What are you talking about?" Julian Viridian put her face on a 70-inch screen. "I know. So I ran her family. Her full name is Serena Holloway Kane. Her father is Arthur Kane." I went cold. Arthur Kane. As in, Kane Capital Partners. "The one and only," Julian said. "Viridian's largest, most aggressive, and most hated competitor. The man who's been trying to force a hostile takeover of Viridian for 18 months. I stared at the wall of my office, the numbers on my screen blurring. "So this isn't an affair?" "Oh, it's probably that, too," Julian said dismissively. "But that's not the point. Elle, your husband didn't just get a promotion. He just publicly allied himself with the daughter of the company's mortal enemy." I finally understood. This wasn't about sex. This wasn't about love. This was a takeover. And my husband was the inside man. The revelation that this was a corporate takeover, not a simple affair, didn't calm me. It focused me. The ice in my veins sharpened to a razor's edge. I worked through the night, fueled by a toxic mix of adrenaline and betrayal. My secure office was silent save for the rapid click of my keyboard. Liam thought he was clever. He was about to find out what a real forensic audit looked like. I moved past the joint checking and the leveraged stock portfolio. That was amateur hour stuff. The flashy, emotional spending. The real fraud is always buried somewhere boring. I went for our joint retirement account, the one we'd been dutifully funding for 10 years. It was our untouchable nest egg. I ran my proprietary software, a program I'd designed myself to detect micro-anomalies in large data sets. I set the parameters to flag any recurring external transfers, no matter how small, over the past 5 years. The screen populated almost instantly. My stomach tightened. It wasn't one large transfer. It was hundreds. Small, seemingly random payments. $750 on a Tuesday, $1,000, $200 on a Friday. They were spread out, inconsistent enough to look like fees or administrative adjustments to a lazy eye. But my software saw the pattern. They were regular, methodical. A steady bleed. This had been happening for 3 years. He had been stealing from our future, bit by bit, for over 1,000 days. I isolated the recipient account number. It was a single domestic holding account. I ran the number against the federal banking database. It was registered to a limited liability company, an LLC. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I pulled the state and corporation records. The name on the screen made me sick. Vance Global Strategies, LLC, Vance. He used my name, my maiden name, the name of my father. This wasn't just a tool for theft, it was a calculated insult. He was hiding his crimes behind my family's reputation. He was making me the face of his fraud. The sheer, naked arrogance of it took my breath away. He was so confident in my ignorance, so sure I would never look. Vance Global, I whispered. The name tasted like ash. I pivoted. Now that I had the entity name, I could cross-reference it everywhere. I searched Viridian Dynamics vendor payment database, a system I still had access to through my own firm's credentials. I typed in Vance Global Strategies, and the screen lit up like a Christmas tree. This wasn't a small-time bleed. This was a fire hose. Vance Global Strategies was listed as an active strategic consultant for Viridian. It was receiving massive 6-figure payments, monthly, consulting fees for $150,000, market analysis for $200,000, discretionary project retainers for another $75,000. This was large-scale corporate fraud. My retirement account was just his seed money. The real target was Viridian. He and Serena, the daughter of the company's main rival, were systematically gutting the corporation from the inside. They were embezzling millions. I started tracing the outflows from the LLC. Where was the money going? I found it. A wire transfer for a down payment on a new car. I pulled the purchase agreement, a brand new silver Maserati Gran Turismo, registered not to Liam Vance, but to the LLC. I found another set of wires, a series of massive payments to a property developer for a penthouse in the new glass tower downtown, the one with the private elevator. The deed was in the name of Vance Global Strategies. I finally understood the announcement in the lobby. The promotion. It wasn't a reward for Liam's hard work. It was his payout. He and Serena hadn't been given new leadership roles. They had taken them. They had maneuvered themselves into positions where they could authorize their own fraudulent invoices, making the theft look like legitimate business. They weren't just partners in an affair. They were partners in a multi-million-dollar conspiracy. I sat back, my mind reeling from the sheer scale of it. He was going to bleed Viridian dry, tank its stock, and let Serena's father pick up the pieces for pennies on the dollar, all while sitting in a penthouse paid for with stolen money. And he had used my name to do it. I had enough. I had enough for Julian to go to the board, to the SEC. I had him dead to rights. But I kept digging. It's my nature. I never stop at the first answer. I analyzed the remaining outflows from Vance Global. After the car, after the apartment, there was still a steady stream of smaller, regular payments. These weren't to vendors. They were direct deposits. I pulled up the recipient names, expecting to see more shell companies, more aliases. I saw the first name Chloe Vance. My sister. My blood ran cold. No. It was a coincidence. It had to be. I pulled the second name. Margaret Vance. My mother. I stared at the screen, the room suddenly spinning. My sister. Chloe. My mother. Margaret. They were on the payroll. They were receiving monthly deposits from the same fraudulent company Liam was using to embezzle millions. The text message from my mother flashed in my mind. So happy for Liam. You must be so proud. She wasn't just proud. She was a beneficiary. This wasn't a corporate takeover. This wasn't just a betrayal by a husband. This was a conspiracy. And my entire family was in on it. It was 3 a.m. The evidence on my screen was a judgment. I shut my laptop, the click echoing in the sterile silence of my office. The ice in my veins had cracked, leaving only a hollow, vibrating numbness. This was no longer an audit. It was an excavation of my entire life. I didn't drive home. I drove to the new, trendy artisan district, the one filled with overpriced coffee shops and reclaimed wood. I parked across the street from Chloe V., my younger sister's brand new fashion boutique. It had been her dream. It opened 6 months ago, a shockingly fast launch she credited to a mysterious angel investor she'd refused to name. I sat in my car for an hour, watching the sunrise glint off the polished brass lettering of her sign. A sign paid for with my stolen retirement, a sign paid for with embezzled corporate funds. At 9 a.m., I saw her pull up in her new white SUV, a gift, she'd said, from her investor to celebrate the launch. I got out of the car. I had printed one document, a single page, the bank statement from Vance Global Strategies, showing the monthly deposits to her and our mother. I walked in. The little bell above the door chimed cheerfully. Chloe was behind the glass counter, steaming a silk blouse, humming along to some indie pop song. "Elle," she said, her face bright with surprise. "Oh my God, what are you doing here? Don't tell me you're finally taking a day off. I have this new Italian cashmere I was saving for you." I didn't say a word. I walked straight to the counter and laid the single piece of paper down on the glass, between her and the steamer. She kept smiling, glancing down, expecting an invoice or a note. I watched her eyes scan the page. I watched the smile freeze, curdle, and then collapse. The color drained from her face, leaving a sick, pale mask. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a terror that confirmed everything. The steamer hissed in her hand. Forgotten. "Eliza," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Eliza, you don't understand. He paid for this, didn't he?" My voice was low, dangerous. It didn't sound like my own. This entire shop, the car, the lease, did he pay for it with my money or with the money he stole from his company? Her hand started to shake. The steamer head clattered against the glass. I didn't know." "Don't lie to me. Chloe, you're a bad liar. You've been getting deposits for 18 months. She flinched, and then the tears came, hot and pathetic. "He said it was his bonus," she finally wailed, the excuse tumbling out. "He said he'd landed a massive new fund and was finally making more money than you. He said he wanted to help the family, to finally be the one to provide. He made me promise not to tell you. He wanted it to be his thing. Finally making more money than you." The words hung in the air, a perfect summary of 1,000 petty jealousies I had always chosen to ignore. He hadn't just bought her silence. He had bought her loyalty by appealing to her resentment. He used my name, Chloe. "He said it was to honor you," she cried. "That Vance Global was a tribute to our family name, that you'd be so proud." I turned and walked out the door. I left her sobbing among the silk and cashmere, the bell chiming mockingly behind me. I got back in my car. My hands were steady on the wheel. There was one more call to make. I dialed. She picked up on the second ring. "Eliza, honey, what a surprise." "I was just thinking about you." "Mom," I said, "what is Vance Global Strategies?" The line went silent. It was a heavy, guilty silence, a void of static where her cheerful chatter had been. "Oh," she finally said, her voice strained, falsely light. "Honey, that's just a little business thing Liam asked me to help with. Just some paperwork." What kind of paperwork, Mom? Oh, she flustered. It was something about taxes. He's so smart about that stuff. Eliza. He said it was a way to move money around for tax advantages, to protect his bonuses. He said it was all perfectly legal. He's just so clever. He's just so clever. And the money he's been depositing into your account every month. I asked, my voice flat. Is that just clever? 2. Another pause. This time, when she spoke, her voice was cold, defensive. It was a dividend. Eliza. For my help. Liam is a generous man. He's been taking care of this family. Which is more than I can say for some people, who are too busy with their careers to even call their mother. That was it. The knife, inserted and twisted. I hung up the phone. I didn't need to hear any more. They didn't just know. They were complicit. They were willing accessories. Liam hadn't just deceived me. He had recruited my own family to help him. He had seen their weaknesses, Chloe's envy, my mother's bitterness, and he had exploited them. He had turned them into pawns in his game, and they had let him, gladly, because the money was good. They had chosen him. The numbness receded, replaced by a clarity that was absolute. There was no safe place. There was no one to call. I was utterly and completely alone. The hollow ache in my chest was gone. I had no family to protect. I had no one left to betray. I had only the audit, and I was going to finish it. I drove back to Julian's office, the city lights smearing across my windshield. The encounters with my mother and sister had cauterized the last bleeding wound. There was no more pain. There was no more shock. There was only the cold, hard calculus of the audit. I had found the bottom, and my family was digging. I walked into Julian's office just before dawn. He was already there, a pot of coffee brewing, looking grim. He'd clearly been working all night, too. "You look terrible, Elle," he said. "It's worse than we thought," I said, skipping the pleasantries. I plugged my laptop into his large monitor. "This isn't just Liam and Serena. He's built a network. He's been making regular payments from Vance Global to my mother, Margaret, and my sister, Chloe." Julian, who had been mid-sip, set his coffee mug down, hard. "He's paying them for what? For their silence, for their compliance. My sister's new boutique, it's a front. My mother's dividends, it's hush money. They're complicit. My entire family is involved." Julian ran a hand over his face. "Eliza, this is a domestic dispute turning into a RICO case. The legal implications just quadrupled. Are they just beneficiaries, or are they active participants?" He stood up and began to pace. "We need to know who is legally tied to this entity. Who signed the incorporation papers for Vance Global? I already have them," I said. My voice was flat. He stopped pacing. "You what?" "I pulled them an hour ago." I clicked a file. "Filed in the state of Delaware, 18 months ago. Standard LLC formation." The document filled the screen. It was simple, bureaucratic, and utterly damning. We both leaned in, scanning the digital signatures. "Managing partner," Julian read aloud. "Liam Vance, no surprise there?" "Managing partner," I continued, my finger tracing the next line. "Serena Holloway, also expected." "And the beneficial owner?" Julian asked, his eyes searching the page. "The person who actually owns the assets? Is it your mother?" "No," I said. I scrolled down to the last signature line, the one required by federal law, identifying the ultimate controlling party of the entity, the name registered with the IRS, the one who would be responsible for the taxes, the debts, and the crimes. My own name. Eliza Vance. It was a perfect forgery, a flawless, confident loop of my signature, one he had seen on 10 years' worth of checks, contracts, and birthday cards. Julian just stared. He took off his glasses, polished them slowly, and put them back on, as if hoping the words would change. They didn't. "My God," he whispered. He backed away from the screen and sat down heavily in his chair. He's not just embezzling, Eliza. He's framing you. The pieces clicked into place with the sickening finality of a prison door slamming shut. This wasn't an insult. This wasn't a petty swipe, using my maiden name. This was the master stroke. He hadn't used my family against me. He had used me against me. He had built this entire multi-million-dollar fraud, this corporate time bomb, and he had put my name on the detonation switch. I was the legal owner. I was the scapegoat. My reputation as a meticulous, brilliant forensic accountant was the perfect cover. Who would suspect the auditor, and who would believe her when she said she didn't know? He's going to walk away. I said, the words tasting like poison. He and Serena will bleed Viridian dry. Let her father take over. And then they'll... What? Trigger an anonymous tip to the SEC. Exactly, Julian said, his voice hard. And when the federal investigators kick in the door, whose name will be on every document? Who is the legal owner of the slush fund? Who is the person who has been illegally funneling money to her own family? It's you, Elle. He's not just running. He's handing them the rope to hang you. And then I saw it. The final, terrible truth. The lobby, the silence, the stares, the receptionist's frozen face, the guards looking away, the pity. My God, the pity. I had thought they were pitying me for being the cheated wife. I thought they were embarrassed for me. I was wrong. They weren't looking at a fool whose husband was leaving her. They were looking at a criminal who was about to be caught. They had all seen the announcement. They knew Liam and Serena were the new power, and they must have heard the rumors that were surely circulating that the wife, Eliza Vance, was the one behind the financial irregularities. They didn't pity me. They were afraid of me. They were watching a dead woman walk. Liam hadn't just humiliated me. He had been executing me in public, and I was the only one in the room who didn't know it. Julian didn't speak for a full minute. He simply walked to a small, dark wood cabinet, took out a heavy crystal decanter, and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a glass. He didn't ask if I wanted it. He just slid it across the desk toward me. It wasn't a peace offering. It was fuel. I looked at the whiskey, then back at him. Eliza, this has changed, he said, his voice quiet, all the legal bluster gone, replaced by a grave seriousness. This is no longer about you winning a divorce. This isn't about getting the house or half his assets. This is about you staying out of a federal penitentiary. He sat on the edge of his desk, facing me. He has built a perfect cage, and your name is on the door. Every piece of evidence we found so far could be spun to make you the architect, the brilliant forensic accountant who went rogue. It's a clean, simple, and utterly believable narrative. I said nothing. I just stared into the glass. We have 2 options, he continued. 2, and only 2. Option 1. We walk into the SEC's office. First thing tomorrow morning. We hand them everything we have. We present you as the victim, the betrayed wife. We show them the forged signature. We offer your testimony. And we pray. We pray they believe us over the mountain of circumstantial evidence he's piled up against you. We cooperate fully and hope for leniency. Best case, you walk away with nothing, your reputation in ruins. Worst case, they see you as a co-conspirator trying to cut a deal. He paused, letting the weight of that settle. Or, I asked, my voice a rasp. Or, he said, taking a deep breath. We play his game. We use this. We don't go to the SEC. We go to the Viridian board. We use the threat of exposure, the Kane Capital connection, the entire fraudulent structure as leverage, not just for your divorce, but to force them to clear you, to make this entire thing disappear. We fight fire with fire. We burn him to the ground before he can burn us. My mind was already spinning, calculating the variables, the risks, the potential outcomes. Julian saw it. But you need to understand, Eliza, he said, his voice dropping. There is no halfway. If we choose that path, There is no line. You will be using evidence that implicates your mother and your sister as accessories to a federal crime. You can't expose him without exposing them. You will be actively, consciously destroying your entire family, right alongside him. The choice hung in the air: prison or patricide. Metaphorically, at least. I picked up the glass. The whiskey burned, a sharp, clean fire that cut through the ice. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Dawn was breaking. The city below was a web of lights, a complex system of arteries, indifferent. I thought of my sister, Chloe, crying pathetic tears in her stolen boutique. I thought of my mother, Margaret, her voice turning cold and sharp, defending the man who was paying her. They weren't just pawns. He hadn't forced them. He had offered, and they had accepted. They had taken the money, knowing it was dirty, knowing it was tied to him, and they had chosen the money over me. They destroyed me first, I said, my back to him. I turned around. The glass was empty. They stood by and watched him build this cage around me. They held the nails. They weren't just complicit, Julian. They were beneficiaries. They were living off the proceeds of my execution. I placed the glass back on his desk with a quiet click. I don't want to escape. I'm not a victim running for a plea deal. I want to expose. I want my name back. The real one. The one he and my family tried to soil. My eyes met his. I want you to find everything, every transfer, every email, every server log. I want to know where every single stolen penny is, from the Maserati to the paperclips. We are not going to the SEC. We are going to war. A slow, wolfish grin spread across Julian's face. He was a hostile merger attorney. After all, this was the language he understood. All right, L. Then let's get to... His private line rang, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the tension. He frowned, annoyed at the interruption. He snatched it up. Thorne? I watched his face. The predatory smile vanished. His eyes widened. His knuckles went white as he gripped the receiver. He looked at me, his expression a mask of pure disbelief. When, he demanded. He listened, his jaw tight. I understand. No statement. Thank you. He hung up the phone. What is it? I asked. They beat us to it, he said, his voice hollow. That was my contact at the courthouse. A new filing just hit the docket. 15 minutes ago. A filing? What filing? Viridian Dynamics, he said, has just filed a $10 million civil lawsuit against you, Eliza Vance, for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and embezzlement. He pointed to the laptop. They're citing your sole ownership of a fraudulent shell company, Vance Global Strategies. They've already won the public narrative. They just made the first move. The lawsuit was a declaration of war, and it was brutally effective. Within hours, the $10 million suit was picked up by the financial press. My name was toxic. My assets, the ones Liam hadn't already hidden or stolen, were frozen by court order, pending the civil trial. I was an outcast, a pariah, and legally radioactive. They've boxed us in, Julian said, pacing the length of the temporary office we'd rented a sterile, anonymous room under a false name. They control the narrative. They control the evidence. They're painting you as a disgruntled, thieving wife, and we're on the outside. They think they've won, I said. I was sitting at a folding table with a high-speed encrypted data line, staring at the digital copy of the forged signature. That's their mistake. They're arrogant. They're celebrating. And that means they're getting sloppy. Sloppy or not, their servers are still their servers. L, we can't get in. We have the what? The Vance Global LLC. We don't have the how. We can't prove who signed that paper. We can't prove who authorized the transfers from Viridian. We need to place Liam's fingers on the keyboard. We need the server logs, I said. I need the originating IP address for those wire transfers. I need the workstation ID. I need the exact timestamps cross-referenced with Liam's keycard access logs. And how do you plan to get those? Julian countered, throwing his hands up. You're the public enemy. You call Viridian's IT department. They'll hang up and call their lawyers. No one will risk their career for you. No one, I agreed. Except maybe one person. I moved to a separate laptop, one I used only for secure off-grid communications. I initiated an encrypted, anonymous call. After 5 rings, a nervous voice picked up. Who is this? Marcus, I said. It's Eliza Vance. There was a sharp intake of breath. Marcus was the head of network security at Viridian. 3 years ago, I'd been brought in to audit his department. His boss was convinced Marcus was incompetent and was looking for a reason to fire him. I found the discrepancy his boss was screaming about. It wasn't fraud. It was a simple, buried coding error in a patch. I found it, fixed it, and saved Marcus his job. I had never called in the favor. Until now. Eliza, I can't talk to you, he whispered, his voice terrified. They're watching everything. You're God, Eliza. What did you do? I did nothing, Marcus. I'm being framed. By Liam. He used Viridian's servers to create a fraudulent LLC and embezzle millions, and he put my name on it. Jesus, he breathed. I need your help. I need the server logs. Marcus, just from Liam's division. I need the transfer authorizations to Vance Global Strategies for the last 18 months. No, he said, the word coming out as a choked sob. No, Eliza, I can't. You don't understand. This new SVP, Serena Holloway. She's a tyrant. She's ex-Kane Capital. She came in and installed a whole new security overlay. It's not just our system. It's hers. It's military grade. It monitors every query, every file access, every keystroke. If I even look at those logs, an alarm will go straight to her desk. I'll be fired. I'll be implicated as your accomplice. I have 2 kids. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't. He was breathing hard, on the verge of hanging up. I was perfectly calm. The fear in his voice had given me the answer. It's okay. Marcus, I said, my voice soothing. You're right. It's too dangerous. I don't want you to look for the logs. He paused, confused. You don't? No. This new software. This spyware. It's not a Viridian standard protocol. Is it? No, he said. It's proprietary. From her father's company. It's deeply illegal. It's not just monitoring work. It's scanning personal emails. It's a wiretap. I know, I said, a cold, thin smile touching my lips. I looked across the table at Julian, who was watching me. His eyes narrowed. That's why you're not going to send me the server logs. Marcus, you're going to send me the installation protocols. You're going to send me the system architecture for Serena's illegal spyware. You're going to send me the proof. 20 minutes later, a data packet arrived in our secure inbox. Julian and I studied the contents. He let out a low whistle. This is not just invasive. It's a federal crime. 12 of them. They're monitoring their employees on a level that would make the NSA blush. They thought they were untouchable, I said. They thought they were building a fortress to protect their fraud. I closed the laptop. Julian. He was already dialing his legal secretary. I know, he said, a predatory grin spreading across his face. Get me a judge. I don't care who you have to wake up. He looked at me. We're filing a countersuit. Not just a defense. An attack. We allege, I said, the words falling into place like tumblers in a lock, that Viridian Dynamics, under the direction of Serena Holloway and Liam Vance, has installed illegal wiretapping software, violating the privacy of every employee in the company. We allege they did this specifically to conceal their own fraudulent activities and frame me. And, Julian added, his voice alive with the thrill of the fight, we demand an immediate emergency court order, a temporary restraining order on their entire IT department. We demand a full, court-appointed independent forensic team to sweep their servers, not to look for my fraud, but to preserve the evidence of their crime. I nodded. Liam had sued me for $10 million to lock me out. I had just used his own paranoia to get a judge to give me the master key. Our countersuit landed like a hand grenade. The court order, granted by an irate federal judge at 5 a.m, sent Viridian's legal department into a full-blown panic. They had been the predators. Now, they were the prey. Their own illegal surveillance system was being turned against them, and a court-mandated forensic team was, at this very moment, walking into their headquarters with a warrant to seize and image their servers. They were blindsided, and they were terrified. I knew this, because 20 minutes after the order was served, my secure phone rang. The number was blocked, but I knew who it was. I was in the temporary office with Julian. He saw the call and raised an eyebrow. He pointed to a small, black recording device on the table, already active. The court order authorizing the server sweep also gave us the right to record any and all communications from Viridian employees pertaining to the case. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. Hello. Eliza L. Thank God. It was Liam. His voice was a masterpiece of feigned concern, a thick, syrupy performance of a worried husband. Elle, what are you doing? Are you insane? I'm not sure what you mean. Liam, this countersuit, this claim about spyware. You're making yourself look unhinged. You're trying to drag the whole company down with you. It's desperate. Elle, and it's just so sad. I pictured him in his new office, the one paid for with stolen money, probably looking out the window, feeling powerful, feeling magnanimous. This lawsuit against you, it's bad. Elle, it's really bad, he continued, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. But you can still make this right. You can stop this. I'm not the one who needs to make anything right, I said, my voice as cold and flat as a steel table. You framed me, Liam. There was a pause. The line, which had been filled with his theatrical breathing, went perfectly still. Then he laughed. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a cold, sharp bark of a laugh, completely devoid of humor. The mask of the concerned husband dissolved, revealing the arrogant, contemptuous stranger underneath. Framed you, he repeated, savoring the word. God, you just don't get it. Do you prove it? I said nothing. Julian was listening intently, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. You can't prove a damn thing, Eliza. Liam sneered. I've covered every track. I've spent 3 years building a firewall. You couldn't see if you were standing on it. You were always the smarter one. Elle, I'll give you that. You were always the brilliant one with the numbers, but you were never, ever the more ruthless one. You always played by the rules. It's your fatal flaw. He was gloating. He was so confident in his firewall that he couldn't see the army that had already breached it. But, he said, his voice shifting back to a tone of condescending reason, I'm a generous man. I'm willing to give you a way out. Because, believe it or not, I don't want to see you completely destroyed. A way out, I repeated, my eyes on Julian. Just sign the divorce papers, the ones my lawyer sent over. They're generous. You walk away. You stop this countersuit nonsense. You just go, and the $10 million lawsuit you filed against me. I asked. That's the deal, Elle. You sign the papers. You agree to the terms. You stop fighting. You admit your mistakes. And I'll talk to the board. I'll convince them that you've suffered enough. I'll persuade them not to pursue criminal charges. There it was. The offer. He was offering me a choice. Take the public fall for the civil suit. Be branded a thief for the rest of my life. And in exchange, he would generously keep me out of prison. He was handing me the shovel he'd used to dig my grave and offering to let me fill it in myself. You're offering me a deal, I clarified. I'm offering you a lifeline. Eliza, he said, his arrogance peaking. It's the only one you're going to get. Take it. Walk away with what little dignity you have left. Don't make this messier than it already." I hung up. I looked at Julian. He was checking his watch. "Right on schedule," he said. "He thinks he's in control," I said. "He's an amateur." Julian pointed to the silent, blinking red light on the recorder. "And he's a talkative one." I smiled, a thin, cold expression that didn't reach my eyes. Liam didn't know that as he was delivering his grand, villainous monologue. Julian's court-appointed forensic team was already inside Viridian's server room. He didn't know they had served the warrant, silenced the alarms, and were, at that very second, plugging directly into the main hub. He didn't know that his entire hard drive, every file, every deleted email, every hidden ledger, was being mirrored. And he certainly didn't know that his magnanimous offer, his thinly veiled threat, his admission of control over the board, his entire self-incriminating confession had been made from his Viridian company phone. He didn't know that his call was being legally, perfectly, and irrefutably recorded as Exhibit A in the very investigation he thought he was controlling. He had just handed me the gun, the bullets, and his own signed confession. The data from the server image was a digital avalanche. For 48 hours, Julian and I, along with his forensic team, didn't sleep. We sifted, we cross-referenced, we built our case. The server logs were the foundation. They showed, without question, that every single fraudulent transfer to Vance Global Strategies originated from Liam's personal workstation IP address. We could trace the keystrokes. The forged signature on the LLC documents, when analyzed by our handwriting expert using the digital file, was confirmed as a high-quality, but definite, forgery. And then there was the crown jewel, the audio file of my phone call with Liam, his cold laugh, his admission, "I've covered every track," his thinly veiled threat to convince the board not to press criminal charges. It was a confession, gift-wrapped in his own arrogance. We had everything. We could prove he did it. We could prove I didn't. But as I was tracing the final outflows from Vance Global, I found the real motive. It wasn't just about a penthouse and a Maserati. "Julian," I called out, my eyes blurring from staring at the screen for 2 days straight. "Look at this." I'd isolated a series of encrypted outgoing transfers from Vance Global. These weren't going to my family or to luxury vendors. They were going to an offshore account in the Caymans, an account I traced back to another shell company. "This one isn't ours," Julian said, leaning in. "No," I said. "This one is owned by Arthur Kane, Serena's father." We both stared at the screen. The pieces rearranged themselves into a new, much uglier picture. "This isn't just embezzlement," Julian said, his voice low. "This is industrial sabotage. Serena and Liam aren't just stealing," I said, finally understanding the true scope. "They're systematically devaluing the company. They're inflating expenses, creating fake consultant fees, all to drive the stock price into the ground. So her father can initiate his hostile takeover," Julian finished. "He's not just buying the company. He's having his daughter and your husband burn it down first so he can buy the ashes for cheap. Liam thought he was a partner. He was a pawn. He was the disposable inside man, and Serena was the real executive, working for her father." The realization was sickening. He had sold me, my name, and his own company, for a woman who was undoubtedly planning to dispose of him the moment the deal was done. "The annual shareholder meeting," I said suddenly, checking the corporate calendar. "It's in 2 days." Julian nodded, seeing it too. "That's their stage. They'll get up there, present the doctored quarterly reports. Record profits. They'll call it. But the real numbers, the ones they're hiding, will eventually leak. The stock will crash, and Kane Capital will be there to pick up the pieces." "Then that's our stage," I said. "We're not taking this to a judge. We're taking it to the shareholders. We're taking it to the press. We're going to blow this up on their launch pad." My personal phone, which I'd left on silent, had been vibrating on the table for the past day. I picked it up. 34 missed calls. a dozen voicemails, all from my mother and sister. I listened to the first one. It was Chloe, her voice hysterical. "Eliza, what the hell did you do? Liam's lawyers are saying you've lost your mind. They're going to take everything, you're ruining us." I deleted it. The next one was my mother. Her voice was pure venom. "How dare you? After everything Liam has done for us, how dare you try to destroy that man? You are a spiteful, jealous child, Eliza. You're going to end up in jail, and you will have deserved it. He is taking care of us." I deleted it. They were still calling. Still. After all of this, they were on his side. They were worried about the money. They had no idea the man they were defending was the one who had set me up for a federal prison sentence. I held the phone in my hand, the storm I had been holding back finally gathering. The quiet, cold control was still there, but it was now charged with lightning. I opened a new text message to my mother, Margaret. I typed one simple sentence. "Be at the shareholder meeting, front row. You won't want to miss this." I sent it. Then, I turned to Julian. "I need you to messenger a package. Today." I compiled a single summary file. Just the evidence of the offshore transfers, the direct link between Vance Global and Arthur Kane's shell company. I put it on a secure flash drive. "To who?" Julian asked. "Arthur Kane," I said. "At Kane Capital Headquarters, just the drive." And a note. I took a small card and wrote 4 words on it. "Sit still and watch." The trap was set. The players were all being moved into position. The audience was invited. The script was written. All that was left was the performance. The grand ballroom of the Hilton was suffocating. It was packed. Shareholders, financial analysts, and the city's business press were all crammed into the rows, ready to hear the good news. On the raised stage, under the bright, hot spotlights, Liam and Serena stood side by side at the podium. They looked magnificent. He was in a perfectly tailored dark suit, she in a striking white dress. They were the picture of corporate power, smiling and nodding at the board members in the front row. And just as I'd requested, seated in that same front row, were my mother and my sister. I could see the back of their heads from my vantage point near the doors. They looked smug, defiant, radiating the self-satisfaction of people who believed they were untouchable, special guests at their golden boy's coronation. The room quieted. Liam tapped the microphone, his handsome, charming face projected onto the 2 massive screens flanking the stage. Thank you, he began, his voice smooth as silk. "It's an honor to be here, to celebrate what has been a truly transformative year for Viridian Dynamics." He spoke for 10 minutes, painting a picture of record profits and brilliant new strategies. I had to admit, he was a good liar. He was selling the fraud beautifully. Then, his tone shifted. He put on a mask of grave concern. "Now, as some of you may know, this incredible success has not been without its challenges. We have recently had to endure a significant internal disruption, an unfortunate attempt at sabotage from within by a disgruntled employee." That was my cue. "Ms. Eliza Vance, ladies and gentlemen." The voice was Julian's, loud, clear, and projected from a speaker he held. The heavy ballroom doors swung open. Every head in the room, all 500 of them, snapped around. The spotlights, confused by the sudden noise, found us in the doorway. I walked in. I wasn't the grieving wife in a sensible coat. I was wearing a steel gray, custom-tailored power suit that had cost me $5,000, my hair pulled back in a severe, polished knot. I was not a victim. I was an auditor, and I was here to present my findings. At my side was Julian, looking every inch the corporate executioner. And just behind us, in dark, conservative suits that screamed federal government, were 2 agents from the Securities and Exchange Commission. On the stage, Liam froze. His mouth was still open, the word employee hanging dead in the air. Serena's face went white as chalk, her hand instinctively gripping the podium to steady herself. I saw my mother and sister twist in their seats. Their faces were masks of pure, uncomprehending shock. I didn't stop. I walked with cold, measured steps down the center aisle, my heels clicking like a metronome on the polished floor. I walked straight to the shareholder microphone, the one reserved for questions. "Sorry to interrupt. Liam," I said. My voice was calm, amplified, and it filled the dead silent room. "I'm Eliza Vance." I let the name hang there, the name on the lawsuit, the name he had just been about to drag through the mud. "And I believe," I continued, "that you, the shareholders, are currently looking at fraudulent financial reports." A collective gasp went through the room. The press was already scrambling, cameras flashing. "That is a baseless, slanderous allegation." Liam sputtered from the stage, finding his voice. "Security, get her out of here." "It's not slander when it's true," I said. "On the screen, please, Julian." On the massive screens behind Liam, his presentation disappeared, replaced by the incorporation documents for Vance Global Strategies, LLC. For the last 18 months, Viridian Dynamics has been paying millions in consulting fees to this entity. "That's a legitimate vendor," Serena snapped, trying to take control. "Is it?" I asked. "Or is it a shell company set up by Liam Vance, and whose signature is that, as the beneficial owner?" "It's my name. A forgery. A very good one, I'll admit." "Lies," Liam shouted. "Then let's look at the server logs," I said. The screen changed. A complex spreadsheet appeared. "These are the server logs, lawfully obtained under a court order, showing every single transfer to Vance Global originating from Liam's personal workstation, authorized by his credentials." The color drained from Liam's face. The screen changed again. An audio waveform. "And this," I said, "is a recording of Mr. Vance offering to convince the board to drop criminal charges against me if I agreed to sign his divorce papers and take the fall." Julian pressed play. Liam's cold, arrogant voice filled the ballroom. "I've covered every track. You were never the more ruthless one." The shareholders erupted. It was chaos. I held up a hand, and the room quieted, desperate for the next blow. I turned my head slightly, looking at Liam. "But here is the real finding, the one I saved just for you, Liam, and for you, Serena." I looked at Serena, who was visibly trembling, "and what I'm sure even Mr. Vance here doesn't know is that his partner, Ms. Holloway, has been playing her own game. She's been systematically transferring all of that stolen money from your little LLC to a third account, a secure offshore account in the Caymans." Liam's head snapped toward Serena, his expression one of pure, dawning horror. "An account," I finished, "that only she has access to. An account held by a shell company owned by her father, Arthur Kane. Isn't that right, Serena? He thought he was your partner. He was just your tool." Liam looked at her, his face a mask of betrayal. "Serena, what is she talking about?" Serena didn't answer. She turned, her face crumbling, and made a desperate run for the stage exit. She didn't get 2 steps. "Ms. Serena Holloway," one of the SEC agents said, stepping forward to block her path. The other agent was already walking up the steps toward Liam. "Liam Vance and Serena Holloway, you'll need to come with us. You're under arrest for wire fraud, securities fraud, and embezzlement." I turned my head to the front row. My mother and sister were frozen, pale as ghosts, staring at the stage. They were staring at their future, the new car, the boutique, the monthly deposits evaporating in front of their eyes. They weren't just watching a man get arrested. They were watching their own complicity, their own greed, being exposed to the world. They were accomplices, and all their money was gone. The agents cuffed Liam. He didn't resist. He just stared at Serena, who was sobbing as she was led away. I looked at my husband one last time. The charming, ambitious man was gone. In his place was a small, old, and utterly defeated shell. He was dead. He just hadn't stopped breathing yet. The room was in an uproar. The press was surging forward. My work was done. I turned to Julian. Our work here is done. I turned my back on the stage, on the shareholders, on my gasping, ruined family. I walked back up the aisle, through the doors Julian held open, and out into the clean, bright afternoon air. My name was clear. My life was my own. The destruction was complete. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a hype by hitting the button to help this story be heard by more people.